October 20th, the anniversary of three Sam Langford fights. This is our ongoing series. The anniversary dates of the great Sam Langford's various battles across the decades, literally decades. So the most important fight that happened on this day, 1914, Sam Langford and Ed Gunboat Smith had their second encounter. They fought toward the end of 1913. Gunboat got the best of it. It was considered a bit of an upset and a surprise, and maybe Langford wasn't in the best shape. They rematched October 20th, 1914, and Langford put it on him. There were two other fights. I'm going to get the other two out of the way real quick. There's a fight in 1922 with Jack Taylor and a fight in 1920 with Lee Anderson. Let's do Jack Taylor real quick. Heavyweight. I didn't do his whole career. He had over 100 fights. Time constraints required that and same for the length of the show. This is going to be a short one. But here's his 21 and 22 season. You can see lost Jack Thompson, lost to the aforementioned Lee Anderson, gets 3 wins, including Bearcat Wright, draws with Bearcat Wright in December, over 10 rounds to close out the 21 season. 22 wins and draws with Gorilla Lewis, beats Kid Lewis over 4 rounds on points. DQ lost to Shot Nunn, and then gets that one back with a TKO in the 6th. Draws with Kid Norfolk over 10 rounds in Omaha, Nebraska. And then he was supposed to fight Sam Langford July 4th, but Jack Mitchell ended up subbing in. I'm not sure why Langford couldn't make it. That was in Missouri. And he stops Jack Mitchell. Then August 21st, the fight with Langford goes ahead. Excuse me. Sioux City, Iowa. And they draw in a no decision bout over 10 rounds. October 8th, Jim Johnson, most likely the white Jim Johnson, not battling Jim Johnson, but I don't know for sure. Cyberboxing Zone on another schedule that I did earlier today had speculation between the two Jim Johnsons on another fighter's career, Jim Flynn's career. So I'm not sure about this. But October 20th, Langford gets him in 15 rounds in their second fight. And then we'll be talking again briefly, at least November 5th, Langford, they're fighting in Mexico, of course, for this fight here that we're talking about. They fight again in Mexico in November. They draw over 15 rounds. And then the end, after another win over Jim Johnson, Jack Taylor ends his season with a KO loss to a very, very old 1922 edition Sam Langford in 8 rounds. Hold on, someone in the chat. Oh, what's up, Bruce? Bruce, I'm mad busy. Oh, thanks for the compliments, Joe. Glad to have you here, sir. Yeah, Bruce, I'm mad busy today, man. It's my second stream. And I got one tomorrow, too. There's another anniversary coming up. Holy cow. I can't keep up. The preparation time to the show length is ridiculous. So anyway, so that's Jack Taylor. As far as I can tell, his series with Langford, he went 0-2-2. So let's stick him up there in the Hall of Rivals. So he went 0-2-2. Where did I have those other graphics on the other series went through? Yeah, the Jim Barry series. Not a good one for Jim. Battling Jim Johnson. Again, Jim not having a good time. Another Jim, the third Jim, Jim Flynn, did actually get a newspaper decision win over Langford in early 1910, but then 5 weeks later, he got the wrath. He got the wrath in the 8th round of a scheduled 45. So 0-2-2 against Langford, even a late edition Langford for someone who wasn't exceptional. Well, that's okay. So shout out to Jack Taylor. That's all we're going to do on him. I got to keep this moving. This show is going to be incredibly short. Bruce, I see you putting up mad content too, my friend. Staying busy. Okay, so let's do the Lee Anderson fight, and then we'll get to Gunboat as best I can in the time that I have. Where's my Lee Anderson graphic? Oh, here. Wait, why don't I see my Lee Anderson season record? What did I do? I have the Lee Anderson rivalry record. Hold on, give me 10 seconds, folks. I'm going to go upload this thing. All right, I'm back. It's just uploading. I don't know. I'm in such a hurry. I didn't think I was even going to squeeze this in before work. I have a couple of things to do. Here we go. Lee Anderson. Here's just his 1920 and 21 season. You can see this man is seriously busy in 1920. Not all high level fights, but oh my goodness. And he gets one over Gunboat Smith that year on May 13th in San Francisco. You see, he's largely fighting in California. He's also fighting in the Pacific Northwest, up in Portland, Oregon, Milwaukee, Oregon, Tacoma, Washington. But he put some stuff in on this season, and October 20th, he gets the best of Langford over 10 rounds. So he's one of the guys. January of 21, and they fight to a draw in Omaha, Nebraska, over 12 rounds. And they are not done. They fight in August, and Langford gets him over points over 10. But then he wins another fight against Langford September 5th. He's got a pair of wins now. That was in Fort Worth, Texas. And then beat Cyclone Turner, and then beat Sam Langford yet again. This is 21 edition Langford, and then loses to him to close out the year. So they had quite a series. I hope I did the right count on their fight series, because I did all this in an incredible hurry. Do I have that right? 6 fights. 3. So Anderson actually wins the majority of the fights. Now, granted, he did fight not the Langford that's in the photo on the right there. He fought a very old version of Langford, but he did, in fact, win 3, lost 2, and drew 1. So he actually, of the series we've encountered so far, he's the guy who's ahead. He's ahead in the running. Gunboat Smith, I didn't do a graphic of him, but he went 1-1. As far as I know, he just went 1-1 with Langford. Won in 1913, lost in 14. Lost badly in 14. He was down in the first. He was getting smacked around for the entirety of that fight. Langford had a point to prove, because initially after Gunboat beat Langford, certain people in the press were speculating Langford really wasn't all that. It was back. And when he got a crack at him, he gave him the full business. And in Claymore's book, he says that years later, Gunboat, I guess he said that Gunboat always thought he peaked in that first fight where he beat Langford, and that he had said that last fight in Boston ruined him. Maybe he was being a little generous, because he did have a lot of wins after that. But yeah, I guess maybe he never felt the same. He got the full wrath of Langford trying to prove a point. Let's take a look at Gunboat's season. So here's his 09 season. Just one setback, a short fight, 4-rounder, no decision to Denver Ed Martin. See, he gets the best of young Peter Jackson there. I think young Peter Jackson fought a long time. So I think he retired in 14, but this is probably a pretty older version of young Peter Jackson. Stablemate and training partner and corner to the great Joe Gans. So you see his stuff. He does drop fights in the 1910 season of Jim Barry and Joe Willis. Jim Barry, Jim Barry, you'll see he fought a lot of dudes. And yes, he lost to guys like Langford a lot, but he did have some pretty quality wins. He was a pretty aggressive guy. And I imagine Gunboat had a little trouble early in his career dealing with that aggression, that naked aggression. But anyway, in 11, he's largely successful. He does lose to Barry again, lose to Jack. I can't even see it, so small on my screen. Jack Geyer and Charlie Miller as well. Does get them back against Charlie Miller, wins, loses, and draws with him. Wins over Mexican Pete Everett, stops him in 2. So he's getting some work on, a lot of California work here. What we got in the comments? Oh, what's up, Joe? Yeah, these men were something else. You can see as I type up more and more seasons, just how many guys were fighting busy years. It wasn't just like Langford was the exception. He's having all these fights. I mean, Gunboat's putting in that serious work too. Lee Anderson putting in that work. It explains why career, even with the guys as tough as they were, if they attained a large degree of technique, it's hard to have a long career when you're fighting this much. When you think about today, they might have a busy year when they turn pro against some journeymen, but then when they step up, it's often, okay, now it's 2 or 3 fights a year. Maybe in the lower weights, there's more, but up around Gunboat's size, the guys today, if they fight 2 or 3 times a year, that's decent. So this wasn't a time when you could do that, but you can make your name. So he's making his name. He's fighting over on the West Coast. You can see in 21, that's a legit season of work there. He does drop 3 fights, but he wins an awful lot more than he drops. He also draws with Jack Twin Sullivan. By this time, Jack Twin Sullivan was kind of a journeyman, but earlier in his career, being a top player. He gets a win over Al Kubiak in Philly. no decision bout, but he gets the best of Al Kubiak, the Michigan Giant. Fighting some dudes. Porky Dan Flynn, who was, if you'll remember, was in Australia with Langford, and also fought Langford in, I believe, Boston after they got back from Australia. But he always fights some dudes. 1913, you can see he did not have a bad year. I mean, shoot, Al McCluskey goes down in 3. Bombardier Billy Wells goes down in 2. Fred McKay down in 2. George Boar Rodell, 10-round no decision, gets the best. Jess Willard, future heavyweight champion, beats him on points over 20 rounds. George Rodell again goes down in 3, TKO. Fireman Jim Flynn, who, as we know, even though he'd been fighting for 20 years at this point, he's still 4 seasons away from knocking out Jack Dempsey, hot prospect Jack Dempsey in 17. So win over Flynn does mean something, even though quite a few people were able to beat him at different times. He was also able to beat some high-level dudes. Carl Morris, Gunboat gets Carl Morris, Tony Ross, the Italian Bearcat, Charlie Miller, and then gets Sam Langford. That is one hell of a season. That is a serious 1913 for him. He doesn't fight all the top heavyweights, but beating Willard and Langford, Langford, a multiple-time colored heavyweight champion, Willard, the future, basically white champion, as it turned out. Pretty serious year. So, I think that contributed to, at the end of that season, he gets the best of Langford. They're like, look, Gunboat is the best. Because let's see, he hadn't lost since Porky Dan Flynn in August. And he had a bunch of fights before that year closed. So he finished the year on a strong burst of success, other than a draw with Twin Sullivan. And in 13, he goes unbeaten, unless I've made a terrible mistake in my graphics. Then in 14, stops Arthur Pelkey. In 15, 6-rounder over Jack Blackburn. Now, apparently, the win over the extremely clever and brilliant Jack Blackburn also helped give his supporters the sense that the Langford win was no accident. They lose to George Carpentier in England. Comes back a couple wins, newspaper wins, Cyclone Johnny Thompson over Battling Levinsky, another great fighter. Then he goes back in with Langford and gets the destruction. But he does close out the year with 3 wins. And his career goes on and on and on. But I didn't type up his whole thing. Just that I did there took way too much time. Yeah, that's right, Joe. They fought all over the world. I mean, there were just so many places that would put on fights. So for a person who was willing and able, they could punch their way into the scene much more quickly than today, because it's harder to stand out if you're barely fighting, even if you're doing real well. Some guys like Mr. Taylor here had some, after this season, like 23 and beyond, he still had some tough fights and some good performances. This was, even though the series with Langford didn't go well, Langford was an exception to be so dangerous so late on. There are other guys, James Toney, like if you look at a young James Toney and then you like a super middle and then you look at him fighting at heavy and you're like, is that the same guy? He's got the same forehead, but man, but he could still fight. He could really fight. I've been on a James Toney binge these last couple weeks. It's fantastic. So anyway, let me pull this back up. Let's pull up Gunboat. So we had a phenomenal 1913 season, unbeaten, which is very difficult to do with that many performances. And then in 14, he dropped Carpentier and Sam Langford, but, he lost 2 great fighters. I don't think there's any shame in that. And he did beat Jack Blackburn the same year. And in 1912, I do believe that's the Leaperville Shadow, George Godfrey, a green version of him that he stopped in 2 rounds. George Godfrey was an enormous person. Gunboat was not enormous. He was tall, but he wasn't particularly heavy. So that's a really good win to be able to stop a guy that large, even if he is a little green. I don't know what would have happened if the more mature, seasoned version of Godfrey got in with him, like in a time machine and jumped back to that season. It'd probably be a little bit uglier, but he got him. So credit to Gunboat. I can't believe I actually got all those graphics prepared in time to do this and get up out of here because I got stuff to do before work. But I didn't really want to miss too many anniversaries. The one I did earlier today was a makeup from yesterday. I just can't start sliding like that, even if the shows are very short. Now, we do have another Gunboat fight coming up this year, for which I'll have a lot more prepared information about their careers and the fight specifics of both fights. This, I'm just rushing to get something out. So, but in November 17th, we'll be talking once again about Gunboat Smith and Sam Langford as they relate to each other. So it's been real, folks. I hope you're enjoying the series. If you have any ideas or feedback, throw them in the comments. And let me pull a picture of Langford smacking someone with a left hook. I don't actually remember what it was that put Gunboat down in their 14 fight. It was a third round, but I can't remember the thing. I think he first put him down with a sweeping left hook, like early in the fight in the first round, but he was getting battered around. He got seriously beat on. And we've seen this in Langford's career. Sometimes he would take it easy, measured pace, not necessarily trying to make the guy look so bad that no one ever wants to book them, because he's definitely eating off these fights. By this time, he doesn't really, I don't know that he has any savings. I don't think he made some money for Australia, but once he left Australia, I don't think he had a lot of money left. So Langford's, fighting all this schedule. He's not the only one, but these guys get it on. They partly because they have to, but also the opportunity's there. Get it in while you're young. So Gunboat doesn't always fight this many times a year, but Langford's one of the guys who kind of did. Most years, he had pretty crazy seasons and was unusually tough and durable, which is how he managed to last from 02 to 26, doing it that way. Really 03 to 24, the busy years. Actually, I'm not even sure if 24 was busy for Langford. You get the idea. A little bit over 2 decades of busy schedules. Pretty hard to do. Here's Langford's 21 through 23. That's a lot of stuff right there. That is no joke. Well, all right, folks, we're going to call it. We did get it in. It's only a 17-minute show. My apologies for not being like a very involved one. Not that you necessarily need to hear just a ton of me rambling, but we'll certainly get back into this rivalry between these two that was short but pretty fiery before very long, because Langford's 1913 was largely successful. Gunboat did get the best of him. Somewhere here I have Langford's 13. Let me pull this beast up. Yeah, so not as good as some of his years, but I mean, he got wins over Jim Barry, Porky Dan Flynn, John Lester Johnson, Jack Lester, and the great Joe Jeanette. But he also dropped a decision to Joe Jeanette, or a no decision, but Joe Jeanette clearly got the best of him in New York in October. But then in December, he came in and put on a magnificent performance in Paris over 20 rounds. Got that one back as part of their 14-fight series. So Gunboat was one of the few, because if you look after the Gunboat Smith loss, it's all the way the fight after the revenge beating, 6 days actually after the one that we're talking about, currently the one where the anniversary is of. He loses an upset to Jeff Clark, very mobile jabber mover out of Joplin, the Joplin Ghost. So you can see there's a lot of success for Langford, wins and draws only between, in that just in like 11 months. But look how many fights he has in that 11 months. You can really build momentum in this time. We saw it earlier with our Jim Flynn talk, where, his year-to-year record was okay, but he put some runs on that allowed him the opportunity to fight, Tommy Burns, and then later fight Jack Johnson. And these guys do that. If you put up a really good run, Langford just put up numerous runs, but because of the division he ended up in, not being active at the top, certainly not active against him at the top. He did all this and he didn't get the same opportunities as others, but lots of guys got screwed of opportunity. He just got more screwed because he was doing more to earn the opportunity. That's how it goes. We're going to celebrate him anyway. So thanks for joining in and checking out the show. And I'll be back tomorrow with another one. I can't even remember what the anniversary is. That's embarrassing. I wonder if I have my graphic pulled up. I do. So what is tomorrow? Jack Thompson? I can't even read my own writing. That's not good. Yeah, 15-round drawing points to Jack Thompson on the 21st of 1919. Hey, I'll pull up his 1919. Why not? I got it here. So this one says November 24th. Okay, so I must have looked on either Cyber or BoxRec. I think this one's sourced from Cyber, so I'm going to go in and see if I can figure out. So one of those 2 days I'll do that. Oh, thanks, Joseph. Thanks for coming by, brother. So I guess I'll have to figure out again with BoxRec and Cyberboxing Zone. They have different ways of verifying the dates, things like that. Different thresholds of what they consider confirmed rather than just reported. So I'm gonna have to go back in. It might be that Jack Thompson, unless I'm highly confused. Maybe it's alternately reported. We saw that with the Jim Flynn in his record, especially. There's lots of stuff that's reported, sometimes even possibly in a different month. And I'm assuming the people who research it go and look at what the other guy was doing on the overlap date to make sure that it wasn't two separate fights. Because we do have that with Langford's long rivalry with the great Black Panther Harry Wills, where some people say it's 18 fights. I've seen as many as 23 as far as just relayed in text, not listed, but I've seen people say, oh, they fought 23 times. So sometimes reporting the way we interpret it is important. And I haven't done the direct research, first person research to have a strong opinion on this. So I'm trying in the graphics to account for the different reporting. So with this 1919 for Langford, the next show that I do, I'll have it updated and merge Cyberboxing Zone and BoxRecs. And I don't do enough any research practically in this time period, so I wouldn't be adding anything. But in the earlier seasons, I would, like Langford's first several seasons, I would actually have my own takes on certain things because I've spent quite a bit of time now, what feels like a lot of time looking at what everyone was doing. So sometimes it can, I won't get into the specifics, but there's some fights in his early careers where different sites have different takes, and I have an opinion because I've seen things that lead me to believe it from the newspaper reports of the day. Long story short, it's very complicated, but the important fights are generally pretty well listed, and absent like a typo or misremembering, the dates are pretty solid for most of them. So I hope y'all have just a fantastic day. And that's an older picture, Gunboat there on the left. He already had a hell of a chin, but I think he's a little bit older there, maybe 30-ish. It's hard to tell with these fighters. They've had so many fights by the time they hit 30. By the time Langford hit 30, he was saying like it was harder to train, didn't want to train like he used to. It's tough when these guys are on the grind. It happens to a lot of people in a lot of industries, which includes the fight game. So have yourselves a great day. We'll see you either tomorrow or in a couple of days once I figure out what that anniversary actually was. And as Rocky used to say on his little show he had, which is on YouTube, keep on punching. Take care, y'all.